So I could quite happily move to this house. Look at its cute little garden, lovely wattle sort of fences to keep to keep animals out from eating your vegetables, basically. And then it's got a lovely garden growing things you can eat, essentially. So the people living here would have greatly supplemented their own diet by things they could grow in their own little garden. And thatched roof, obviously wooden frame construction with wattle and daub between the wooden frames. Notice also the windows for security and also insulation to an extent. Most normal people couldn't afford glass windows, so you might have removable panels on the inside, but then you have these bars, and the bars across are primarily, I would think, for security, so that someone can't just climb in through your window, or indeed an animal of some kind. Yeah, beautifully upkept, and you can imagine a museum like this, it's not just a case of getting the thing and putting it here. The upkeep and maintenance of these buildings is a constant ongoing thing, and for people who originally lived in these houses, equally, they would have had to spend a lot of their time making sure that their house remained watertight and secure. Interesting little detail, you notice that down here we've got stones, so people who could afford it, if they could, they would put a stone course or sometimes brick course along the bottom and then sit the sort of lintel wood on there, because then of course the damp can't get to the wood and rot the wood. Hey Lucy, what can you tell us about this house?
We're going to another house.
Oh, okay, can we talk about this one for a second?
It's a 17th century house. It's did you see the sign?
No, I haven't seen the sign for this one yet.
We'll film that in a minute, but essentially it was in a state of disrepair, but not down to its bare bones by any means when they found it, and it's been transported and refurbished. But if you can have a look inside.
So it's 17th century?
Yes. So one of the great things about here, some of the houses they've just sort of recreated and left as houses, but other ones they've kind of furnished inside. So if you come on in.
Wow. I'm sure the camera will take a second to adjust to the new light. I'm stepping over the lintel there.
Hang on a second,
there we go.
First.
Oh, I love the herbs and stuff hanging
So
up.
this is a house that would have been heated. It's got a proper fireplace in the corner, as you can see. So this room would have been heated for them.
And it's actually been used recently by the look of it, 'cause there's
Yeah,
black ash right the way out the door.
They do use. So they've got this sort of main living space, and they've got a little sort of pantry area through there.
That's the kitchen.
That is the kitchen.
Can we
If you follow Lily, brand newly
upstairs.
confident presenter, up the tiny staircase. These are hilarious. I'm constantly hitting my head in these houses. I'm 5'10" and they're barely tall enough for me, so it's a good thing Matt's wearing a hat. Let's go up the stairs.
Yeah. Lily's YouTube's newest presenter, age 4.
You will think it's amazing upstairs, won't you?
So I imagine they put these handrails here for the benefit of modern people. They wouldn't have been there originally. Although you never know.
Definitely not original in style.
Look up there, Daddy.
So it's got 2 bedrooms up here. It's got some nice little beds stacked out. And if you have a look under the
Oh, for the baby.
look under the eaves, you can see all the straw that's packed in as an insulation.
I imagine the mice love to, and various types of birds like to get in there. Look at these windows. So the windows we were talking about before, you can see there is that's really interesting. It's waxed canvas.
We haven't saw that.
Yeah, this is waxed cloth to keep the moisture out, but it lets the light in. It's great.
Clever, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's really nice. You can see all the sort of straw.
It's amazing.
Packed in under the
It really strikes home though how dark it is inside historical properties of this kind, because obviously the more windows you have, the more heat escapes. So you're going to have, certainly in England, maybe not in countries like Italy or Spain, but in England you're going to have fewer windows so that for most of the year you can stay warm. But it does mean it's really dark inside. So obviously we've got electric lighting up here now, but originally there just would have been candles. Obviously in later periods oil lamps, but in candles for the most part, and then you take that screen off the window to get what light you can in during the day and let the air in, but really pretty dark in here. But really you're not going to be spending your time, people didn't spend a lot of time inside their houses during the daytime. They got outside and they did stuff, they worked or had fun. But what an amazing cottage, and yeah, very different to what most people are used to living in now. And I'm very interested by that waxed canvas window, very, very interesting. And it's a removable frame, and you can actually see down here there's sort of a bit so you can lift the thing. There's a, I don't know whether this is an original feature, but a swivel thing there that you can see. You can take the frame out and open up those windows should you want to. Right, let's go back down. So I've spoken in the past about the height of ceilings. It's something, ceilings and doorways, people often talk about because they visited a historical house or a castle, and they say, oh well, people were much shorter in historical times and that's why their houses were smaller. But that's not really accurate, is it, Lucy?
No, it's not accurate. I mean, it is kind of accurate that in general I think people were a little bit shorter because they didn't have such good nutrition. But the reason that the ceilings are low in the houses is almost certainly because it's a better way to conserve heat in the property. So that if the ceiling's low, there's less height, less room for the hot air to rise and escape, so it keeps it a bit warmer. Because I imagine it being quite cold as well.
But I really want to go and see another house.
Let's go and see another house. I think the other thing to mention as well is that building materials were, you know, that you could conserve building materials by not building your ceilings so high. So that's another factor as well.
Animals are cute, and animals are cute, and animals are so soft.
Carrot? Have a sandwich? Or pear or apple? You want me to do your apple juice?
Go on, cockerel, go and fight the crow. We all want to see you do it. Go on, cockerel.
Chicken's not like apples.
Fight, 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 fight.
One of the really nice things about this place isn't just that they do sort of these recreations of these houses, but they also have a lot of sort of farm animals, and they try to have breeds that are representative of the ones that they would have had at that period in history. And so they either sort of get old breeds or actually create sort of hybrids to make sort of more accurate representations of them. So they've got sort of chickens. They've also got sheep, and they've got some Shire horses too. We should be having a Shire horse ride. Well, not on the horse, in a cart pulled by the horse later on, I imagine. So yeah, it's really nice. The sort of devotion to really recreating the feel here is it's very strong.
Yeah, so they're doing historical recreation of all kinds, including with the breeding of the animals. These are really friendly chickens, has to be said.
I think they're motivated by wanting to eat Lily's picnic, which is what I'm motivated by as well.
This is a granary. That's right, it's an 18th century granary. That is a place for keeping grain. And the one thing that I want to talk about, because I have always found them really cool, are those. Try and get my finger in the right place. There you go. It looks like a stone mushroom, doesn't it? But of course what they're for is protecting the store, the grain store, from mice and other rodents climbing up the stalks or getting into the grain and eating it during the winter, which you don't want to happen, of course, or any part of the year, and also perhaps damp as well. But they're great things. You often find them as decorative elements used in gardens in England anyway. But this is again from Sussex, and I'm in the Weald Downland Museum. Thatched roof, brick walls in this case because this is 18th century, but really, really cool. I really, really like those. When does this date to?
It says that this house is from the early 15th century, but then it says that it's presented as it would have been in 1540.
Okay, so it was originally built. Yeah, we're going to go in a minute. So the original house was 15th century, according to the information board, but it was then obviously extended or changed and that's the form we see it in now from circa 1540. So this is the same time as the Mary Rose. Mary Rose sunk in 1545, so we're talking about the reign of Henry VIII. Sort of 60 to 80 years after the Wars of the Roses, but it was originally built probably in around the time of the Wars of the Roses. Beautiful house, could happily live in this one. Hello.
This house has more beds. There's 2 beds. And it's really nice in here. Come in here.
Okay, should we go and look inside?
Yeah, look inside.
So it's really interesting up here in terms of the windows. If you think about the house that was sort of 200 years later that we saw earlier, and they had that smell of waxing over the windows to keep it out. Literally the windows are just barred holes in this house. And you want to keep the heat in a bit, and you pop a nice big wooden board over the top of it.
So this goes to what I was saying before about having shutters, and obviously people who couldn't afford glass. This is what they did. They had barred windows for security and to prevent birds from randomly flying in, or at least discourage the larger birds from flying in. And obviously on ground levels, security from intruders. And then you just slip a couple of, they're almost like shields, aren't they? A couple of, there we go. So these are tongue and groove. I assume that's all accurately done. And you just lift it up and slip it into place. So one thing, ironically, you know, we go on about the height of ceilings and the heights of doorways and stuff in medieval houses. And yes, indeed, when you find suspended ceilings, they are often very low. But in a space like this, the ceiling's pretty damn high because the ceiling is the roof. So in this case, we've actually got, you know, tons of space, and it's beautifully constructed up there. Great big supporting beam here, and interesting to note, I am 6'1" and wearing shoes, and even this beam is well over the height of my head. That's probably up at about 6'3", I should think, 6'4". So this is a lovely airy, you know, in contrast to some of the other houses here, this is a lovely airy space because you've got multiple windows all around. And yeah, pretty big bedroom. I imagine a whole family would have, or at least a good percentage of a family would have slept in this room, parents and children probably. But yeah, it's a nice space. I think the primary issue with a space like this would have been keeping it warm in winter. So I can't actually see anywhere, there's no chimney breast that I can see up here, there's one downstairs. But maybe they would have had some other solution for keeping it warm up here, otherwise it would have been really cold. Obviously suspended ceilings good for keeping the heat in, if you can afford to have them put in. This doesn't have any evidence of a suspended ceiling, so it's just open up to the rafters, so any heat even that you have in here is just going to go straight up and be lost through that roof. So it's going to be pretty chilly, which is why really important to have warm bedding and lots of it, I should think. Also noteworthy, you get these very tall windows like this one over my shoulder, and of course they bring in a huge amount more light. They've still got bars on them for security and privacy, and later on in the Tudor period, this is Tudor, or at least it's shown in its Tudor form, but later on in the Tudor period and going into the Elizabethan kind of era, we start to see stone windows that come in with lead light windows, which actually follow this general pattern of having this, you know, vertical divisions. Of course it means that you can use smaller pieces of glass, but it also means by having it tall like this you can let more light into what would otherwise be quite a dark space. So this is a pretty classic 15th century house of middling status, I suppose. Someone who's got money, not at the top end of the social ladder obviously, but it's got a large central hall in here, and then essentially two ends at the building. Both lead up to second stories. One end is one open area fully at the end, and then one open area up there, and the other end is divided into two rooms down here with one large floor up there. Let's have a little look. Let's look at this end first. So as you can see, this is a pretty dark room. This is the smaller of the two, what I would imagine were bedchambers, so upper story floors. And this, I would suggest, is the less important of the bedrooms. It's certainly the smaller one. But it only has one small window that we can see there. And one interesting thing I noticed is about the tiles. Interesting to me anyway. I don't know how many of you it's interesting to, but so the tiles there, you can see each tile has two, let's try and put my finger on there, there we go, so it has pegs and two holes. There's actually a peg missing in this one, but you can see each tile has two holes and wooden pegs, and that's what holds it onto those slats that go across. So pretty easy to replace, pretty simple method. So you just cast those tiles each with two holes, just wooden peg in each one, and then they hang over the slats that go horizontally along there. Let's go and have a look in the other rooms. Again, interesting point to note that they all have these lintels. So thinking about in a medieval context, 15th century context, you have to get used to stepping over the lintels, okay? So if you were thinking about running through doorways or fighting through doorways, if you've got lintels like that down there, then you have to get over those without falling over. So this is a really nice airy little room. Two windows, again we can see standard bars there. This one has a hinged shutter fitted there. Let's go and have a look in the other rooms. Again, the second downstairs room on this side of the building, two windows. There's the door behind me where I've just come in from the main hall there. Oh, and one thing to mention quickly about the main hall, you'll see down there it has a hearth in the centre, so that's where you've got your main fire. Now let's go up the stairs. Oh, this is interesting filming. What? Trying not to hit my head or fall off the steps. There we go. And up we come into the main bedchamber. This is the room that I would choose as my bedroom. Again, very high ceilings. Essentially, that's the roof up there. There is no suspended ceiling here. And very light because we've got two very big windows, and you see they've got hinge shutters. Again, the bars. And this is a fairly large room. I'll just turn the camera around so you can have a proper look. I'll move to the back corner of the room. You can see this is a pretty good big space. I'd say it's about 20 feet by 15 feet, for those of you who know imperial measurements. I can't convert that to meters right now, I'm afraid. So there we go, that's the kind of classic, what I would describe as a relatively well-to-do medieval person in the late 15th century. This is the sort of house that they would live in. This house in fact continued, it was from Kent, it was taken from Kent, reconstructed here in West Sussex at the Weald Downland Museum. And if you're thinking about 15th century again, kind of, you know, maybe late 100 Years' War or Wars of the Roses, this is the type of house that a relatively well-off, well-to-do, middle-class person would live in. So it gives you an idea of the sort of size, the number of rooms, this kind of thing. So main hall in the middle, rooms off that, and then two bedchambers above those. Cheers. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, follow us on Facebook. You can buy t-shirts through Spreadshirt, support us on Patreon, or follow us on Pinterest. Thank you.